Chapter 7. Tea and Brass. Mary Somerville's drawing room kept a pleasant hush, the sort of quiet that settled over good paper and better minds. A coal fire behaved itself in the grate. On a side table, a tea service stood at attention. Beyond it, a chessboard lay mid-game, the bishops tilted as if gossiping. The windows gave a pale winter light that made the silver gleam, and the gilt picture frames recede into manners. Mrs. Somerville presided with the ease of a woman who could do a day's mathematics before breakfast and still pour tea without a tremor. "Mr. Babbage," she said, "you've come with your pockets full, I think." Charles Babbage bowed, which was to say he ducked his head while already reaching into his coat. "Only brass and paper, Mrs. Somerville. They are all the riches I possess." He produced a narrow strip of paper from a leather wallet, the edges pricked with tiny holes where some little mechanism had advanced it. Neat columns of figures marched down its length, crisp as a schoolmistress's ruler. A young woman in dove grey took the strip as if it might be hot. She wore her gloves still. The light found the sheen on the kid leather and the clever set of her mouth. Her eyes, bright and intent, did not leave the numbers. "Ada," Mrs. Somerville said fondly, "you know Mr. Babbage." "I do," said the Countess of Lovelace, and tipped her head to him with mischief in it. "He once showed me a machine that added with more grace than a dancing master. I've been unwell since, from envy." "Then I've done you a kindness," Babbage returned lightly. "Envy keeps the blood moving. Tea would steady you." "Tea steadies everyone but poets," Ada said, and allowed Mrs. Somerville to press a cup into her hand. Only then did she glance down at the strip again. "These are yours, Mr. Babbage?" "From the engine." "Fresh this week," Babbage said, "printed without a clerk lifting a quill. A short run to correct a lunar distance at a certain hour." "And why," Ada asked, "should London require lunar distances at tea time?" "Because London sends ships to sea at all hours," Babbage said, drawing a small compass from his other pocket as if he kept them the way other men kept loose coin. "And because a miscopied figure can turn a tide into a reef. The East India men visited me, Sir Edmund Rawdon, head of the shipping committee, with them. There was a wreck he let the words sit without melodrama. I showed them how a small error here," he tapped the strip, "becomes 20 miles of danger there." Ada's gaze flicked up, keen. "You showed them." "With the engine and a chart," Babbage said. "It was not a conjurer's trick. Only good tables and the mercy of brass." He smiled, quick, boyish, almost shy beneath its wit. "They asked what it would cost to finish what I began." Mrs. Somerville's dark eyes softened. "And you told them?" "That brass is cheaper than widows," Babbage said. Ada's gloved finger travelled down the printed column. "The digits sit very upright," she murmured. "One trusts a number more when it holds itself well." "That has been my argument to the Treasury for 15 years, Babbage replied. "Perhaps the East India Company will prove more susceptible to typography." Ada's mouth curved. "The company is susceptible to very few things, Mr. Babbage, but profit is among them." Mrs. Somerville set down her cup. "You will forgive us if we ask plain questions, Charles. We have watched you wrestle brass and Parliament both. The first difference engine consumed money and patience alike, and at the end you quarrelled with Mr. Clement until the government shut its purse." Babbage's expression tightened, then eased with a practiced self-mockery. "Mr. Clement believes perfection can be cut with blunt chisels, so long as the chisel is his. I believe chisels should answer to perfection. There lay our difficulty." He recovered his lightness. "It is one of the few quarrels in which both parties were right and the engine wronged." Ada looked back to the strip. Still, there was a failure. "There was an interruption," Babbage said, as if setting a mislaid book back on its shelf. "A failure is a theorem disproved. I have had no such pleasure. Every time the machine has been allowed to be itself, It has behaved better than most people I know. Mrs. Somerville hid a smile in her teacup. You hear his wit. It is the same wit with which he persuades himself that account books are sentimental novels. Ada laid the strip on the chessboard, aligning its columns with the ranks. If I were inclined to be cruel, she said thoughtfully, I should remind you that the last time you were given money enough to build Rome, you built half of Athens and a road to Carthage instead. Ah, Babbage said, delighted. But what a road! Entirely the wrong one, I suspect, Ada said, but there was admiration in the reproof. She tapped the paper lightly. And yet, this is very fine. It is one thing to say numbers will not lie in brass. It is another to put them under a gentleman's nose. That was my purpose, Babbage said. I do not expect directors to fall in love with calculus. I expect them to bring a balance sheet to my little theatre and discover that arithmetic can pay its own ticket. Ada regarded him over the rim of her cup. And what is it you hope to build with their ticket money? Only the machine that will add and subtract for sailors. Or the other one you spoke of, the machine that will, how did you put it, work upon the very alphabet of analysis. Babbage's eyes brightened, boylike again. You remember too much. I remember just enough, Ada said. If the difference engine is a mill that grinds one grain, differences, then the other is a mill that would grind any grain one might pour into it. Numbers or symbols, so long as the rules are fit to be turned into teeth. Mrs. Somerville's brows lifted, pleased. You see why I keep her near me, Charles. She makes metaphors you can build a bridge with. Babbage leaned forward, elbows hovering an inch above the table as if he had trained himself never to offend furniture. One thing at a time, he said, though the words seemed to argue with his pulse. If I bring London a clerk of brass who never miscopies, the second machine becomes not a fantasy, but an inevitability. I mean to move from necessity to ambition by way of respectability. It is a dull road, but it does not wash out in the first rain. Ada's eyes had softened as he spoke. Now they sharpened again. You will forgive me another plain question. If you finish your difference engine, if you print tables so pure that every navigator need only look, does that mend the man who will not look? Does it mend the printer who drinks at noon? Does it mend the director who buys cheaper instruments and pockets the difference? No engine can mint honesty, Babbage said. The admission cost him nothing. It almost seemed a pleasure to put the limit in a sentence. But an honest tool makes dishonest men work harder. If I remove their excuse, the blurred figure, the drooping eye, I take from them a little of their power. And, Ada, he touched the strip with 2 fingers, very lightly. It spares the lives of men lost at sea. The last sentence landed like a coin on a table. Ada set down her cup. The china clicked. Mrs. Somerville's voice gentled. There was a boy on that ship, she said. 2, perhaps. There always are, Babbage echoed. I will not argue with Providence about storms. But I will not forgive London a crooked table. Ada turned the paper strip end for end, as if to test whether the digits held their posture upside down. And the company, do they understand what they are buying? Not your brass, but your hatred of crookedness. They understand fewer wrecks, Babbage said. That is enough to begin. A footman, neat as a semicolon, appeared with fresh water for the tea. Mrs. Somerville poured and sent the cups around with the brisk kindness of a general issuing blankets. Ada rolled the strip once and slid it into her reticule as if it were a fan. May I keep this? If it wins me an ally at your breakfast table, Babbage said, you may have the whole week's output. Careful, Mrs. Somerville said, smiling. She will ask for a month and keep you honest. I mean to do worse, Ada said, rising with a rustle of dove grey. I mean to ask questions until your answers cease to be charming and become useful. If you are to persuade men with purses, your rooms must run like your wheels. Then come and make the rooms obey, Babbage said, also standing. Ask what you please. I will answer with brass where I can and manners where I must. Ada offered him her hand. He bowed over it without quite touching. She withdrew it with a look that could have been approval or warning, and was probably both. As she turned, she paused at the chessboard, where the bishops still leaned toward one another. With a gloved fingertip, she nudged one piece back to rights. There. We shall not have them gossiping during an endgame. She glanced at Babbage. And Mr. Babbage, do not quarrel with your chisels this time. Even a perfect plan requires a patient hand. Babbage's smile deepened into something steadier than delight. I shall try to deserve a patient one. When she had gone, after Mrs. Somerville's soft farewells and the rustle of skirts in the hall, Babbage remained standing a moment, his fingers resting on the back of a chair the way a man rests a hand on a balustrade before beginning a staircase. The numbers on the strip had left a faint black ghost upon his thumb where the ink had not quite dried. Mrs. Somerville watched him with affection sharpened by long practice. You have the look, Charles, she said. The one you wore when you first put a gear in your waistcoat pocket and called it a friend. Then I am well accompanied, he said. He folded the copy of the strip he'd kept for himself and slipped it into that same pocket, where it made a small, honest weight. And if the company brings me brass and breath, I shall give London something to set its watch by. See that you give it something to set its conscience by as well, Mrs. Somerville said, rising. Ada is not wrong. Your wheels do not mend men, but they can take away one excuse from those who prefer darkness. Babbage bowed again, sincere this time. Then we will light a little of London. The rest, he glanced at the door through which Ada had gone, will be a conversation. He took his leave into a pale afternoon that smelled faintly of coal and river. Behind him, in the quiet drawing room, the bishops had ceased gossiping. The numbers on the table still held themselves upright. And somewhere in Dorset Street, a young man checked a governor, fed a little more steam, and listened with his whole body to the sound of brass agreeing with itself.